Have you ever walked into a room expecting nothing more than routine and suddenly found yourself staring straight into the eyes of the one person you thought you had lost forever? That's exactly what happened to Ethan Cole, a single father barely holding his world together. His life had become a cycle of work, bills, and raising his daughter with every ounce of love he had left. Yet on a rainy evening, during something as ordinary as parent-teacher night, fate pulled him back into a story he thought was over. Because sitting across the room was Claire Montgomery, the girl who had once held his heart. Only now, she wasn't the shy, dreamy teenager he remembered. She was a powerful CEO, untouchable, successful, and completely out of reach. But when their eyes met across that classroom, time froze. Their shared history came rushing back, and in that silent exchange, both of them knew this was no coincidence, this was unfinished business. The rain came down in sheets that evening, painting London's cobblestone streets with shimmering streaks of silver. Ethan Cole tugged his jacket closer, the fabric worn and thin after years of use. He carried no umbrella, he hadn't remembered one, too distracted by the thought of getting Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, to school on time for parent-teacher night. Lily skipped beside him, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. Her brown curls clung to her cheeks from the mist, but her excitement was unshaken. "Daddy, do you think Mrs. Taylor will say I'm good at writing? I really tried hard on that story about the horse." Ethan smiled, his tired eyes softening. "I know she will, Bug. You always try your best, and that's all that matters." Walking into the school always stirred something in Ethan. The bright walls lined with colorful drawings, the chatter of children in the hallways. It reminded him why he worked endless hours at the garage, why he pushed himself even when exhaustion weighed him down. Lily deserved the best he could give her, even if that wasn't much by the world's standards. But as he entered her classroom, shaking the rain from his hair, his entire world tilted. Standing at the far end of the room, speaking softly with another parent, was Claire Montgomery. He knew her instantly, he couldn't not. The sight of her hit him like a lightning strike. Claire, the girl he had once dreamed of marrying. The girl he had whispered promises to under starlit skies. The girl he had lost, without closure, without explanation, more than a decade ago. She looked different now. Her long hair, once wild and free, was swept back into a sleek style. She wore a tailored suit, the kind that said authority, success, control. But her eyes, those green eyes, were unchanged. And when they lifted and met his, the noise of the classroom faded, time itself seemed to collapse. For a moment, Ethan was 18 again, standing in the summer rain, holding her hand. And then reality crashed back. He wasn't that boy anymore. He was a man hardened by struggle, and she was something untouchable. Lily's cheerful voice pierced the silence. "Daddy, that's Mrs. Montgomery. She's on the school board. Everyone says she's really important." The name echoed in his head. Montgomery, of course. Ethan had overheard other parents whispering earlier about the influential CEO who supported the school with her donations, the one everyone admired but rarely saw. And now he knew it was her. Claire's polite smile froze when she recognized him. For a heartbeat, her professional mask slipped, and he caught a flicker of something Rorschach, nostalgia, maybe even regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced with a carefully measured expression. "Ethan," she said at last. Her voice was calm, lower than he remembered, but it still carried warmth buried beneath the steel. "Claire," he nodded, his own voice rougher than he intended. He had thought of this moment 1,000 times in quiet, lonely nights, but now that it was here, words felt impossible. The teacher, sensing a tension she couldn't name, excused herself to speak with another parent. Suddenly it was just Ethan and Claire, standing in the middle of the buzzing classroom, as though the world around them didn't exist. "You look different," Claire said, her eyes sweeping over him. It wasn't judgment, it was curiosity, as though she were trying to piece together the years. "And you look like you own half the city," he answered dryly, forcing a small smile. She let out a soft laugh, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Not half, just a company." The divide between them was clear. He was a man barely scraping by, with grease-stained hands and second-hand clothes. She was a woman who had conquered boardrooms, commanding respect wherever she went. But even with that gulf, something stirred between them, something old, something unfinished. And Ethan couldn't help but wonder why now, why here. Was this chance, or fate giving them another try? The evening ended with Ethan trying to slip away quietly, hoping Claire wouldn't notice. He wasn't ready for the flood of memories, or the emotions that threatened to drown him. Lily tugged at his hand, eager to get home and share her teacher's compliments about her writing. Ethan focused on her words, but his mind kept drifting back to Claire. As they stepped into the misty night, a voice called out behind him, "Ethan, wait." He froze. Turning slowly, he found Claire standing at the school gates, her umbrella glowing faintly under the streetlight. For a moment, she looked less like a CEO and more like the girl he had once known, vulnerable, human. "It's been years," she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. "We can't just pretend we didn't see each other tonight." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. His instinct was to protect himself, to protect Lily. He wasn't sure what Claire wanted or if he could even give it. But when he met her gaze, the weight of unspoken words pressed on him. "Maybe we shouldn't dig up the past," he muttered, her lips curved into a sad smile. "The past has a way of digging itself up, Ethan." 3 days later, Ethan sat in his small apartment staring at his phone. Claire had slipped her number into his hand that night, telling him to call. He had almost thrown it away, convinced their worlds no longer fit together. But curiosity and something deeper gnawed at him. Finally, with a sigh, he texted her coffee, Friday. The cafe they chose was tucked in a quiet corner of the city, far from her glossy office towers and his noisy garage. When he arrived, he nearly turned back around. Claire was already there, looking effortlessly elegant in a simple coat, her hair falling in soft waves. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. He felt like he had dragged the dirt of his struggles with him. "Ethan," she greeted, standing with a smile that was genuine, not polished. For a moment, the years melted away, and he saw the same girl who used to sit across from him at late-night diners, sharing milkshakes and dreams. They talked, awkwardly at first, stumbling over small talk. But as the minutes stretched, the wall between them cracked. They spoke of old friends, of high school memories, of who they had once been before life swept them apart. And beneath it all lingered the questions neither had yet dared to ask. Why had things ended the way they did? And could they ever bridge that distance now? The conversation shifted from the past to the present. Ethan found himself sharing more than he had intended, how hard it was raising Lily alone, how the bills kept stacking higher than his paychecks, how every day felt like a test he wasn't sure he was passing. He hadn't meant to open up, but something about Claire's listening eyes pulled the truth out of him. Claire leaned forward, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. "Ethan, you've done all of this on your own." She's bright, kind. "That's because of you," he shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm just trying to keep us afloat, and you are," she said firmly. "Don't diminish that." For a woman used to commanding boardrooms, her tone carried a surprising gentleness. But Ethan couldn't ignore the divide. She was living in glass towers and chauffeur-driven cars. He was patching together a life with grease-stained hands. When she mentioned her company, her board meetings, her international travel, it only confirmed what he already knew. She was far above him now. Yet when she smiled, a spark of the old Claire, the girl who once laughed with him under fireworks, shone through. And despite himself, Ethan felt the first dangerous tug of hope. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Claire fell into a rhythm neither expected. Coffee here, a walk there, casual conversations that stretched longer than intended. Ethan was cautious, keeping his distance, but Claire seemed determined to close the gap. One evening, as they sat in the park while Lily played on the swings, Ethan found himself speaking truths he hadn't voiced to anyone. "Sometimes I worry Lily deserves more than me. More than what I can give her." Claire turned her gaze toward him, her expression soft but unwavering. "You give her love. Do you know how many kids grow up without that? You're giving her what matters most." Her words touched him deeply. He had expected pity, maybe even subtle judgment. But instead, she saw strength where he saw weakness. For a moment, the heavy burden on his shoulders felt lighter. Still, Claire carried her own burdens. One evening, after a long day, she confided in Ethan, "I thought success would feel different. I thought if I made it, I'd feel complete. But most nights, I go home to silence." Ethan looked at her, surprised. To the world, she was invincible, commanding boardrooms, making headlines. But behind the image was loneliness. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. And for the first time in years, Claire allowed herself to believe it. Lily quickly grew fond of Claire. She loved how Claire listened to her endless stories, how she encouraged her drawings, how she treated her like more than just a child. Ethan watched with mixed emotions. Lily's laughter was freer when Claire was around, and though it warmed his heart, fear gnawed at him. What if Claire disappeared again? What if Lily grew attached, only to lose her? He had lived that heartbreak once. He couldn't bear watching his daughter face it too. Life threw its first cruel curveball one autumn evening. Lily came down with a fever that wouldn't break. Ethan stayed home from work to care for her, and when the fever worsened, he rushed her to the hospital. The doctors reassured him it was nothing life-threatening, but the scare left Ethan shaken. He missed 3 shifts at the garage, and when he returned, his boss gave him an ultimatum. One more missed day, Cole, and you're out. That night, as Lily slept on the couch, Ethan sat with his head in his hands. Bills were overdue, his job was slipping away, and he felt like he was failing the one person who depended on him most. When Claire stopped by to check on Lily, she found Ethan broken. She knelt beside him and whispered, "You're not failing, Ethan, you're fighting. Don't confuse the two." For the first time, Ethan let someone see his weakness. Claire didn't offer charity or solutions. She simply sat with him, reminding him that love wasn't measured in banknotes, but in presence, in sacrifice, in resilience. "You've given Lily more love than most kids ever see in a lifetime," she told him. And Ethan, though hesitant, began to believe it, but the past still lingered between them. One evening, unable to hold back, Ethan finally asked, "Why did you leave back then, Claire? Why didn't we fight for us?" Her silence was long. Then she whispered, "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I was forced to. My parents thought you weren't enough for me. They made sure I had no choice." The words hit Ethan like a punch. All these years, he had believed she had chosen ambition over him. To learn the truth brought both relief and pain. Relief that she had loved him, pain that they had lost years they could never get back. Forgiveness didn't come easily. Ethan wrestled with anger at her parents, at fate, even at Claire herself. She had let him believe he wasn't enough, and that wound had shaped his entire life. Yet, as he looked at her now, at the way she was with Lily, at the vulnerability in her eyes, he realized she carried scars too. And maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing not to let it define their future. Weeks passed, and the connection between them deepened. It wasn't the reckless love of their youth, but something steadier, forged in hardship and maturity. Ethan found himself laughing again, truly laughing, for the first time in years. Claire, in turn, discovered joy in the ordinary Sunday mornings at the park, Lily's bedtime stories, evenings at Ethan's cluttered kitchen table. When Claire invited Ethan to a charity gala, he nearly refused. "I don't belong in your world," he argued. The thought of standing among polished businessmen and women in their designer suits terrified him. But Lily, with her small determined voice, changed his mind. "Daddy, she just wants you there for her. Please go." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. The gala was a sea of glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos. Ethan felt invisible, out of place, but Claire never left his side. She introduced him proudly, not as a charity case or a friend, but as her guest. When he caught whispers, people questioning what the CEO was doing with a mechanic, he tensed. But Claire held his hand tighter, as if to say, "Let them talk, you matter to me." For Ethan, that moment was more valuable than any riches. The gossip didn't stop at whispers. Rumors spread in Claire's professional circle. Board members hinted she was tarnishing her image, some even suggesting she reconsider her personal choices. But Claire stood firm. "I built this company. My choices are my own. If anyone has a problem, they can step aside." For Ethan, watching her defend what they had made him realize just how far she was willing to go. Yet Ethan's own insecurities clawed at him. He considered walking away. He didn't want to drag her down, to be the stain on her spotless reputation. When he confessed this, Claire's response was firm, almost fierce. "I've built everything alone, Ethan. But what's the point of standing on top if I can't share it? I don't care about their opinions. I care about us." Her words silenced his doubts, at least for the moment. Blending their worlds wasn't easy. Ethan's life was filled with simple routines, while Claire's schedule was dictated by flights, meetings, and deadlines. There were clashes, misunderstandings, moments when both wondered if love could bridge such different realities. But every challenge reminded them, love wasn't meant to be easy, it was meant to be worth it. One evening, after a particularly hard day, Lily curled up beside her father and whispered, "She makes you smile, Daddy. Don't let her go again." Ethan felt his throat tighten. Children had a way of seeing truths adults tried to hide, and Lily was right. He hadn't smiled like this in years until Claire returned. To prove he was ready to truly open his heart, Ethan planned a surprise for Claire. He took her to the riverside where they had shared their first kiss as teenagers. As they stood under the same stretch of sky, Claire's eyes filled with tears. "All these years," she whispered, "and I never stopped loving you." He pulled her close, and in that moment, the years apart dissolved. But life tested them once more. The garage where Ethan worked shut down, leaving him unemployed. Claire offered help, but he refused to be dependent. Instead, with her encouragement, not her money, he took a risk. He opened his own small workshop, a place where he could work on cars and finally be his own boss. It was slow at first, but Ethan poured his heart into it, and slowly, it began to grow. Months later, on a crisp spring evening, Ethan stood outside his thriving workshop as Claire pulled up with Lily. He saw the pride in both their eyes, and his heart swelled. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. Claire joined him, slipping her hand into his. "We lost each other once, Ethan. I won't let that happen again." He kissed her forehead gently, his voice steady. "Neither will I." Under the glow of the setting sun, they stood together, two people scarred by the past but strengthened by it. A struggling father, a guarded CEO, and a little girl who had brought them back together. Love, Ethan realized, wasn't about wealth or status. It was about trust, forgiveness, and second chances. And this time, he was ready to hold on forever.